There are a lot of problems that you can face in your garden, and identifying them is going to be the number one way that you are going to be able to tackle the problem as soon as it happens. Everyone faces garden problems, and some people might even face all of them. And your best weapon against these things is knowing what to do, or at least having a general idea as to what to do so you don't panic in those situations, because man, panicking in the garden, super common for some reason, even though this is one of the most hardy plants ever, and it gives the most benefit of the doubt, and it is a weed, and it will pretty much grow no matter what, and most problems can be solved and then forgotten about, basically. And problems can kind of range from anything that is discoloration, drooping, spotting on leaves, fading, changing color, mold, mildew, bugs, all of those types of things. So yeah, there's a lot of plant problems you're going to be facing in your garden. And that factor alone can make gardening intimidating to the point where no one even wants to do it. They'll see all of the problems that they could face and get paralyzed by the analysis paralysis and then never garden in the first place. Well, keep in mind that you're most likely only going to be facing one problem at a time, and you're not going to be facing all of the problems most likely. So troubleshooting is a skill you're going to need to learn, and troubleshooting, it can seem like a daunting task to a lot of people, especially new growers who don't know much about the plant. But after you learn a couple things about the plant, it's going to be a lot easier to be able to troubleshoot the plant and then address the problem. These things are going to come over time, and your first grow is not going to be your best one by far. So keep that in mind. So we're going to get into toxicities first, because I'm sure a lot of people have faced toxicities in their first grow or their first couple of grows, and this isn't a huge deal. We're going to go over what you can do to solve the problem and how to identify it. So toxicities can be really easy to see because they'll show up looking like a burn or looking like spotting, looking like your plant is taking up too much of something and it is causing physical damage, like someone took a lighter to it or like a blow dryer to it. And it can also look darker green than normal. It will not be the good shade of green that you're going to be looking for. It's going to be super dark. It's going to be like a dark emerald color. And the best way to address a toxicity is to lower the amount of nutrients given in synthetic grows, or just lowering the frequency, or giving your plant a flush. Now, this will flush out excess nutrients. It will get you to a place where you can recreate the balance that you once had, assuming your plant didn't have this issue before. Let's say in the past, like last week, let's say you're vegging, your plants are starting to turn super green, but it didn't look like that the week before. You give it a flush, get some of that excess nitrogen out of there, you lower the amounts you're feeding, and then you shouldn't be facing that problem in the future. Now keep in mind, with a lot of these problems, the plant, when it's damaged, is not going to go back to normal. The plant leaves that are damaged, or the portion of the plant that is damaged, is going to stay damaged. When you're fixing problems or troubleshooting issues, you're going to want to be looking for the new growth, and you're going to be wanting to look for, is the grow rate going back to the same or better, or is your new growth at the very least looking healthy? If your plant is starting to look healthy again at the top, you are doing a great job fixing that issue. Now, in organic grows, what you're going to want to do is you're also going to want to give it a flush, rush out a lot of the excess nutrients, because what could be happening in that case is a lot of the nutrients is being broken down, and the microbes are working overdrive to give your plant more than it needs. But it's not likely to happen in organic grows like it is for synthetic grows, because in organic grows, normally the plant will just take up what it wants and leave the rest in the soil. So you shouldn't have a big problem there. Nutrient deficiencies are similar, but they are opposite. And while your plant can grow when it's nutrient deficient, it is not going to grow optimally. You're going to want to bring back its potential. You're going to want to bring back all of the plant's potential to grow as big and as robust as you need it to. If you're dealing with a deficiency, this is not as detrimental as a toxicity, but it still is a problem and needs to be addressed as such. The number one way to know if your plant is deficient in nutrients is to look at the bottom leaves. If the bottom leaves are starting to go yellow, it means that your plant is running out of nitrogen. Why is nitrogen the thing to look for when you're looking for nutrient deficiencies? Well, nitrogen is a luxury nutrient, and your plant will take it up if it's there, no matter what or how much there is. So, and it's a mobile nutrient, which means it's going to move up the plant. So if your plant is starting to fade at the bottom, it means you're running out of nitrogen and your plant's using it. Now, this isn't the biggest issue necessarily, because while you could not be getting enough nitrogen, you could be getting enough of everything else. And if only the bottom of the plant is struggling, well, maybe all you need to do is take off a couple of those yellow leaves and move on. But if you're facing a serious nutrient deficiency issue, you're going to want to up your feed, either the frequency or the amount. And if you're working with organic grows, you're going to want to top dress, or you're going to want to transplant, get more of that organic matter into the circulation, and in a couple of weeks, you're going to see your plant come back. In a week about. So just to recap, nitrogen is your plant's best friend. It's going to take it up no matter what, and it is the first number on the NPK scale or NPK label when you look at your nutrient bottle, because it is the number one nutrient that your plant is looking for, especially in the vegetative stage. It's not so important in flower, but in vegetative stage, your plant's going to love nitrogen. Now we're going to talk about heat or light stress, which is different from toxicities or deficiencies, because they're going to be happening directly from outside influence. Nothing internal is going on. It's simply the heat is too high or the light is too intense. Now, identifying light stress. If you go into your garden and you see that your plants at the top of the plant, your leaves are starting to get crunchy, they're starting to fold up on themselves in a taco type shape, it is very likely that you're facing a heat or light issue. Fixing the issue can be as easy as readjusting the temperature to the optimal range. I suggest doing this first to then see if the new growth will be healthy, because if you recheck your temperature and it is where it needs to be, and you know that that plant is going to be healthy in that range, then you can narrow it down to the light. You can dim it or you can raise the light. Either way, you need to make it less intense on those plants so that they are not stressed out from too much light. Now, a way to prevent light stress on its own without having to worry about heat stress is if you raise the light on a regular basis as your plant starts to grow, and you keep it at the relatively same height with more intensity. If you can dim your light, it will be way less likely that you will face light stress, because you will be regulating the intensity on the light. Now, it is very easy for the light to get away from you, or your plant to get away from you and grow too high, or just kind of change the way it reacts to things. But in general, if you keep an eye on your light height compared to where your plant is and your intensity with the dimming, you should pretty much be good when it comes to light stress. And then you only need to worry about the heat, which comes down to having quality equipment and also a consistent environment. Drooping leaves are going to be super common, especially if you're a new grower. Drooping leaves is an extremely common issue, especially for newer growers. And once I tell you the reason that your leaves are drooping, it's going to be such a simple answer that you're going to be surprised at me for telling you the answer. If you walk into your grow room and your plants are drooping and they are looking weak and frail and just not full of life, it almost looks like it could be wilting or dying. The culprit is most likely caused by underwatering. Fixing an underwatering issue seems like it would be super simple, but you could be surprised. Now, one way to solve it could possibly be just to give your plant a good amount of water, saturate that grow pot, saturate the grow medium, make sure your plant gets plenty of water that day. That will solve the issue. Your plant will bounce back in a couple of hours and look completely normal. But if you're facing a larger issue, you could be facing a root-bound plant, or you could be facing a plant that's simply not in a big enough pot for it to be taking up an appropriate amount of water or expand its roots. This plant could be super sad, it could be super unhealthy, and you could go a long time without realizing it. Because if you're like, oh, well, I'm watering this plant and I know I'm watering it in a good schedule, you could be ignoring the root issue. What you're going to want to do in that case is you're going to want to transplant your plant into a bigger pot. Give it a couple more gallons of grow medium to expand into, and your plant will be a lot happier. And the real kicker with determining which problem you have is you have to look at the frequency of your underwatering problem, because if you're facing an underwatering problem every single day, it is very likely that your plant's in a small pot. But if it's because you were gone for a week, of course your plants are going to be droopy because they have not been watered in a week. Normally they get watered like 3 or 4 times in a week, depending on your cultivar, depending on your pot size, depending on all sorts of stuff. And always keep in mind that some cultivars take up more water than others, so you're going to want to keep an eye on each individual plant and treat them differently. This is going to give you a better success across the board. The last thing we're going to talk about today is light leaks. Now, I'm sure a lot of people have faced light leaks in the past or are currently facing light leaks now. They're fairly common. But light leaks in flower especially can be catastrophic to someone's grow. Stressing your plant into re-veg, or even worse, turning your plant hermaphroditic from the light stress, and you're growing nanners at that point. Light isn't always the worst thing. It depends on the intensity of the light. Now, when you grow outdoors, of course, you get moonlight. That's not as big of an issue. That doesn't really count as a light leak because it's not intense enough to stress the plant out too much for the photosynthesis not to take place, or it's not intense enough to stress out the plant. So don't worry about moonlight if you are facing these issues. Keep in mind these plants have grown outdoors for possibly hundreds of thousands of years, possibly millions of years. So don't worry about that so much. But if you are facing a light leak issue, or you want to test if you have a light leak in your grow area, it is very simple to do. All you have to do is turn off the lights in your grow area, walk in and have the lights turned on the outside of your grow area, and examine the space around you. Look for the light leaks. Look for anything that could be wrong in that area if you suspect that there is a light leak. It should be obvious where the light is coming from, but it's not always. But once you find the area where the light is coming from, you could do a couple things. You can either patch or repair the leak somehow. But if you want to invest in a quality tent that won't have light leaks in the first place, you can go down in the description below and use that promo code at spiderfarmer.com and save yourself some money at checkout on a grow tent and possibly grow lights. And I will see you next time. Thank you very much.